Alex Miller sat in the kitchen of his Dallas home, mindlessly scrolling through the news on his phone. It was approaching 9 o'clock, and the kids were already asleep. His wife, Sarah, had left that morning for a yoga retreat in New Mexico, and the house seemed unusually quiet without her voice and footsteps. Only one nightlight flickered in the spacious living room, casting long shadows on the walls. Alex tried to keep himself busy cleaning up the dinner dishes, checking his email. A sudden ringing sounded in the silence. The phone lying on the table nearby vibrated, revealing an unfamiliar Californian number. Alex frowned. Who could need it so late? He raised the receiver to his ear. Hello? An unfamiliar female voice said a little hastily. Hello, is this Alex Miller? Yes, it's me, he replied, feeling anxiety rising inside him. I'm a nurse at San Jose Hospital in California. Your wife, Sarah Miller, was brought to us after a car accident. Her condition is serious. Alex didn't believe what he heard at first. Excuse me, what hospital? What accident? The voice broke mid-question. St. Francis Hospital, San Jose, California, the nurse repeated clearly. Your wife was a passenger in a car accident. You have been listed as the next of kin. I am very sorry to inform you that she has serious injuries. Your presence is required to make treatment decisions. There was silence for about 10 seconds. Alex stood there, mouth open, trying to process the words. Sarah, in California, but she was supposed to be in New Mexico on a yoga retreat. A mistake? A coincidence of name? He asked quickly. Sarah Miller, brunette, 34 years old, from Dallas. Yes, that's right, the woman on the other end of the line confirmed in a soft, sympathetic tone. She had her driver's license with her, so we were able to identify her. I'm very sorry. The doctors are doing everything they can right now. Can you come as soon as possible? Alex felt the blood drain from his face. He rose mechanically from his chair, his heart pounding wildly. Yes, of course, he said hoarsely. I'll be on the first flight. Okay, when you know your arrival time, let us know and we'll meet you and fill you in, the nurse said. Sarah's condition is stable but serious. She's unconscious. The main thing is that you're here. Thank you, Alex whispered and hung up. He stood motionless for a few more seconds, clutching the phone in his hand. Then he suddenly came to his senses. He had to act. In California. What the hell was she doing in California? But these questions flickered somewhere in the background. Right now, the most important thing was that his wife was in trouble, between life and death. Alex hurried upstairs to the children's bedroom. He looked first at 8-year-old Mike. His son was sleeping peacefully, hugging a battered teddy bear. In the next room, 5-year-old Katie was curled up on her side, her blonde hair scattered across the pillow. It was both painful and comforting to look at them. They didn't know what had happened to their mother, and Alex had no idea how to tell them. He quietly closed the doors of the children's rooms. Chaotic thoughts rushed through his head. What to do with the children? Who to call in the middle of the night? The first thing he did was dial the number of his neighbor and longtime family friend, Melanie. She was the one who sometimes looked after the children when the couple was away on business. The phone rang painfully slowly, but finally a sleepy voice answered. Melanie listening. Mel, I'm sorry I'm calling late. It's urgent, Alex blurted out, trying to remain calm. Sarah was in an accident. In California. I have to go there right away. There was a short pause on the other end of the line, then Melanie woke up immediately. Oh my God, in California? How? What about Sarah? She's in intensive care, unconscious. I don't know the details. Alex's voice was treacherous. Mel, I really need your help. Can you come over? Stay with Mike and Katie while I'm gone? Of course, Melanie responded without the slightest hesitation. I'll be there in about 10 minutes. How are you? Are you holding up? I don't know. He admitted honestly, running his hand over his face. I just thank you. Don't thank me. The kids will be fine, I promise. Go to Sarah. We'll manage here, she said soothingly. Keep me updated, okay? Definitely, Alex said quietly and hung up. He immediately called the airport, or rather opened the airline app on his phone. Without thinking, he booked a ticket. Alex threw the phone on the couch and walked to the window. Outside the glass, the warm Texas night was standing. The air trembled over the asphalt, invisible cicadas chirped, and rare stars twinkled dimly in the sky. An hour ago, all he could think about was how he would spend the weekend with the kids while his wife was on retreat. And now everything has collapsed. Sarah was seriously injured, 1,000 miles away. Why was she in California? The question was pounding in her head, causing bitter bewilderment. But now Alex pushed it away. Later, later. First to fly out, see Sarah, make sure she was alive, and support her. The rest is not important. He quickly threw a change of clothes and a phone charger into his bag. Documents, wallet. The ticket was electronic. Time dragged on painfully slowly. About 10 minutes later, Melanie arrived, throwing a coat over her pajamas, with a worried face. Alex let her in, quietly explained the situation, trying not to go into details that he himself did not know. Melanie hugged him goodbye. Everything will be fine. Sarah is strong. She will cope. Alex nodded, unable to utter a word. He checked once more whether the children were fast asleep. Then, taking one last look at the cozy, semi-dark house, he went outside. Half an hour later, he was already racing along the deserted highway to the Dallas airport, not noticing the road signs. One thought was pulsing in his head. If only Sarah would survive. Everything else can be fixed, explained. Let her just survive. The engine hummed smoothly, the headlights snatched the road markings and the occasional roadside signs from the darkness. Alex gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling a lump of helplessness and fear rising in his throat. But he held on. He had to hold on for Sarah, for the kids, for the life they shared, which couldn't just be lost overnight. The flight was far away, and the time before the flight dragged on painfully long. Alex found an empty seat in the empty Dallas airport lounge. There were a couple of hours left before departure. He leaned his head back against the cold wall and closed his eyes, trying to collect his thoughts. Sarah was supposed to be in New Mexico. The yoga retreat she had been talking about for the past few weeks was supposedly in the mountains outside Santa Fe. He remembered her excitedly packing her suitcase, her workout clothes, and her new yoga mat. At the time, it hadn't aroused his suspicions. In fact, he was glad that his wife had found a hobby and decided to unwind a little. He had even joked, asking her to show him a few poses when she got back. But now, sitting under the echoing ceiling of the airport, Alex repeated to himself over and over again, "California, why California?" His heart sank again. Perhaps there had been a mistake. Maybe the victim was Sarah's namesake, but the nurse had given her age, and she had her license. Coincidence was out of the question. Details of the last few days began to surface in his head. Sarah was a little more excited than usual before the trip. The day before her departure, she had been texting someone on the phone for a long time, smiling at her thoughts, and she had answered Alex's questions briefly, clearly absorbed in her correspondence. At the time, he hadn't paid any attention to it. Who knows, she might be discussing something with a friend or colleague. And another odd thing, she refused to let him drive her to the airport. She said that her friend would go with her. They would get there together. He found this a little offensive. Usually, he always saw her off before the flight, took care of her. But Sarah insisted, saying, "It's even more fun this way with a friend." Alex didn't argue, although now this memory echoed with an unpleasant chill. What friend? They never did that. And why didn't the hospital in California call this friend? Alex sat up and opened his eyes. It was about midnight. Maybe he should call this friend. He remembered they were talking about Emily, Sarah's friend from yoga classes. Emily was supposed to be going to the retreat too. Sarah had mentioned her name when she was talking about the trip. Without thinking, Alex took out his phone and found Emily's contact. Sure, it was late, but the situation was exceptional. He pressed call. Beeps. Once, twice. On the third ring, a sleepy female voice answered. "Hello, Emily here." Emily, this is Alex Miller, Sarah's husband. Sorry to bother you. Are you, are you with Sarah by any chance? He asked immediately, overcoming the nervous tremor in his voice. Alex, Emily's voice instantly brightened. No. What happened? I'm not with her. She's on a retreat, isn't she? Alex swallowed. So Emily wasn't with her. And judging by her tone, she wasn't aware of what was going on. You see, I got a call from a hospital in California. Sarah was in an accident. I was just told that she's in San Jose in intensive care. There was silence on the line, then Emily gasped. California? What accident? Jesus. I thought she was in New Mexico, at that retreat she was talking about. I thought so too, Alex said gloomily, standing up and pacing the empty waiting room. But apparently not. So now I'm trying to figure it out. You said you thought she was at that retreat. You didn't go with her. No, Emily's voice was still shaken. I couldn't get time off from work, so I backed out at the last minute. Sarah went alone. I mean, she was supposed to go alone, I understand. We discussed this trip a couple of weeks ago, and were planning on going together, but Alex rubbed the bridge of his nose. If Emily had stayed home, then the story about her friend supposedly going along didn't add up. Sarah had lied to him about going with her friend. So she had gone alone, but not to New Mexico, but in a completely different direction. Are you sure the retreat is happening at all? He suddenly asked. Maybe there was no retreat? There is a retreat, Emily answered. Sarah and I found it on the internet. It is indeed an official yoga camp, 3 days of meditation and practice. I even called the organizers to find out about the places. By the way, there were no problems coming there alone. You could live in a shared house. Sarah was very keen on the idea of going even without me. It was probably important for her to change the scenery. I see, Alex said quietly. His heart was beating hard. For a moment he felt ashamed. What if he was wrong to suspect his wife? The retreat did exist. Maybe something had gone wrong and she had moved somewhere. To California. But what could have brought her all the way to San Jose? Emily meanwhile asked excitedly. Alex, do you know the details of the accident? Sarah, will she live? They only told me that the injuries are serious. She's unconscious, he answered dully, feeling how each word echoed with pain. I'm flying out to her. I don't know anything else yet. Oh my God, can I call tomorrow and see how she is? The girl's voice trembled. Sarah is my good friend. I'm just in shock. Of course, I'll keep everyone informed, Alex promised, although he didn't really have a clear idea of who everyone was yet. Sorry for waking you, and forgive me if I sounded harsh. My head is just spinning. It's okay, don't apologize, Emily sighed. Thank you for letting me know. I'll pray for Sarah. Alex thanked him and ended the call. He sank back into his chair, running his hands tiredly over his face. So one thing was clear. Sarah had not been at the retreat. Otherwise, how would she have ended up hundreds of miles away? She had lied to him about her friend, knowing Emily was not going. So she was going to hide the fact that she was going alone. Why? The thought he was afraid to formulate became clearer and clearer. His wife was deceiving him. But why? For what purpose? He tried to push away the worst suspicions that Sarah might be with someone else. But the evidence was inexorably converging on that. What other reason could there be to hide his true whereabouts? He remembered how, a few months ago, he had accidentally noticed a message on her phone from an unfamiliar contact at the time. Sarah had explained that it was a colleague on the project, nothing special. Alex had not paid attention. Now it surfaced in his memory as an ominous sign. The phone in his hand came to life again. This time it was Sarah's sister, Julia, calling from Oklahoma. Emily must have been shocked by the news and had immediately contacted her. Alex sighed and accepted the call. Hi, Jules. Julia's voice was full of panic. Alex, what happened? Emily wrote that Sarah had an accident. Is it true? It's true, he confirmed, closing his eyes. He had to say the terrible words again. She was in a car accident in California this evening. She's in the hospital now, in serious condition. I'm going to see her." "Oh my God, California?" the sister asked, clearly puzzled. She was supposed to be in New Mexico, on her retreat. "I don't understand it myself, Jules," Alex replied wearily. "I'm torn apart with worry, and then it turns out that she's not where she said she was." "It's very strange," Julia said slowly. She seemed to want something, to say something, but held back. "Did you call our parents?" "Not yet. I didn't want to wake them up at night. And I don't know much myself," Alex answered. "I think I'll call them at dawn, when I'm there, or at least on the way." "Yeah, I guess it's better this way." The sister agreed, and then added, "Alex, hang in there. I know you'll be fine. Sarah's strong. She'll get through this, really." There were tears in her voice. Alex tried to speak confidently. "I hope so, Jules. I'll let you know as soon as I know. Okay? And please, take care of yourself there, okay?" she asked. "I don't understand anything about California either, but the main thing now is that she lives." "Yes, that's the main thing," Alex echoed. They said goodbye, and he put the phone down. Julia's words, "I don't understand anything either," stuck in his head. Also meant that Julia herself was as surprised as he was to learn about California. Did his sister really not know anything either? Or was she just playing the part well? Alex shook his head. No, that was stupid. His sister would hardly cover up a lie, especially one like that. Although who could figure them out? He felt himself beginning to suspect everyone around him, and that made him feel sick. He needed to wait until he met Sarah to hear everything from her herself. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to stop his hands from shaking. They would be boarding in an hour. His head was in chaos, fear for his wife, hurt by her deception, worry for his children. But he knew one thing for sure. As soon as dawn broke over the city, he would be on the plane on his way to her, demanding answers and praying that she would survive and be able to give them. As Alex boarded the plane, he settled himself by the window, mechanically fastened his seat belt, and closed his eyes as the plane took off. He usually loved flying, but now he barely noticed what was happening around him. His thoughts kept returning to one thing. How did Sarah end up in California? Why did she go there, hiding the truth from him? Half an hour after takeoff, Alex couldn't stand it any longer and pulled his laptop out of his carry-on. The plane had gained altitude, the cabin lights had gone out, and many passengers had dozed off. Alex connected to the onboard Wi-Fi and opened the Find My Phone service. He and Sarah shared a family account, and the Find My iPhone feature was set up on both their phones. They'd previously used it to see where family members were, like when someone was stuck in traffic. Now it could provide answers. With a sinking heart, he tapped Find Device, Sarah's iPhone. The screen showed a search icon for a few seconds, then the last recorded geolocation appeared. The map showed a California, a region, and a name, Monterey, California. Alex looked closer. Monterey was a coastal town. A fragmentary memory surfaced in his mind. It was about an hour or two from San Jose. The marker was time-stamped. Yesterday, 6:20 p.m. local time. That was a couple of hours before the accident, judging by the call from the hospital, which came in around 7:30 p.m. California time. So her phone was in Monterey shortly before the accident. Monterey, why was she there? Was there some kind of event going on? Or, Alex zoomed in on the map. The marker was next to a coastal road, not far from the ocean. There was a hotel nearby. He wrote the name down in his phone, the Vista Bay Hotel on the coast. It was entirely possible that she and someone who were staying there. Perhaps the person in the car with her. A new guess tightened his chest. Had Sarah spent the weekend at the beach with another man? More and more details pointed to that. Alex felt as if he had been punched in the gut. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes. The thought flashed through my mind. Maybe this was some kind of misunderstanding, a series of absurd coincidences. He remembered the nurse's voice. Your wife was a passenger in a car that was in an accident. A passenger, so someone else was driving. Alex squeezed his eyes shut, trying to suppress the nausea. The picture was coming together in a treacherously clear pattern. His wife had lied about going on a yoga retreat, but she had gone to the ocean with another man. And now she was lying in the hospital between life and death, and he, her husband, an unsuspecting fool, was flying to her, torn between love and rage. He didn't know who to blame more, her or himself, for his blindness. But despite everything, whenever he imagined her face, his beloved face with delicate features, freckles on the bridge of her nose, his heart sank with fear of losing her. Whatever the case, he did not wish her death. He prayed to fate for only one thing: let her survive. They would figure it out later. Alex tried to distract himself, looking out the porthole. The black abyss of night stretched below, the rare lights of cities flickered far below. His thoughts involuntarily transferred to the past, when life was simpler. He remembered how he met Sarah at the university. They turned out to be partners in lab work in their second year. Sarah then chatted cheerfully, Funny wrinkled her nose, trying to figure out the reagents. Even then, he liked her lively, direct, with an infectious laugh. They began dating, got married almost immediately after graduation. 10 years of a happy, as it seemed, life. 2 wonderful children. Was it possible that all this time her unfulfilled old love was smoldering somewhere nearby, which he did not even suspect? Sarah never talked seriously about her exes. There were mentions of a couple of school crushes and a story about a college boyfriend she broke up with before meeting Alex. I think his name was John. Alex didn't remember his last name, and he didn't care then. He wasn't jealous of her past. He thought it was natural that everyone had their own baggage. They seemed perfectly happy. Alex peered tensely into the darkness outside the window. He closed the laptop and put it away. The rest of the flight passed in a fitful slumber. Alex drifted in and out of fitful sleep, then woke up with his heart pounding. At one point, he dreamed of Sarah, alive and well, smiling at him, holding out her hand, and he reached for it, but there was glass between them. He woke up in a cold sweat. Finally, the descent was announced. Early in the morning, the plane landed in San Jose. As the plane taxied to the terminal, Alex was already trying to get up, although there were still several agonizing minutes left before the exit. Finally, he stepped onto the ramp. The cool Californian morning hit his face, completely different from back home in Texas. It was his first time in the city, but everything around him seemed blurry, unimportant. Walking quickly through the terminal, Alex hailed a taxi and gave the address, St. Francis Hospital. His hands nervously fiddled with the strap of his bag. The taxi driver, noticing the passenger's pale, tense face, asked sympathetically, "First time in San Jose?" "Yes," Alex answered briefly, not wanting to talk. "We have a nice city here. It's a shame it's about this." The driver tried to joke, apparently seeing the name of the hospital on the navigator. Alex just nodded, looking out the window. The city was waking up. More cars were on the streets, coffee shops were opening. It was like a parallel reality. For him, there was only one place now, the intensive care unit, where Sarah was lying. The taxi stopped at the entrance to the hospital. Alex handed the driver a bill without waiting for change and ran out. The large light brick building with a blue cross on the facade looked welcoming and peaceful, as much as a hospital could. He took a deep breath at the door, trying to brace himself for what he would see. His heart was pounding. Alex opened the door and stepped inside, straight to the reception desk, where a young receptionist was sitting bored in the morning silence. "Good morning. My wife, Sarah Miller, was admitted to you last night after an accident," Alex blurted out right away. "They asked me to come." The girl quickly glanced at the monitor. "Yes, Mr. Miller, just a second. Your wife is in the intensive care unit now. The doctor wanted to talk to you as soon as you arrived. I'll take you there." Alex nodded, trying to stop his knees from shaking. He was invited to follow the administrator down the hallway. Alex stepped into a small conference room next to the intensive care unit. The receptionist asked him to wait here for the doctor. He could feel his palms growing sweaty. The seconds dragged on unbearably slowly until finally the door opened and a tired, middle-aged doctor in a white coat walked into the room. "Mr. Miller," the doctor asked, holding out his hand. "I'm Dr. Phillips, the surgeon on duty. My condolences." Alex squeezed the outstretched hand, trying to squeeze at least a sound out of his dry throat. "How is she?" "Sarah, my wife. I was told you would give me the details." The doctor nodded, offering to sit at a small table. He sat down opposite, looking sympathetically at the agitated man. "Your wife's condition is very serious, but she is stable at the moment," he began calmly and clearly. "Sarah has been diagnosed with multiple injuries. The main problem is a traumatic brain injury. A strong blow caused a contusion of the brain and swelling. We performed a trepanation to relieve intracranial pressure. Now she is in a medically induced coma, connected to a ventilator, and her breathing has not yet been restored on her own." Each word struck a chord in his heart. Alex sat leaning forward, absorbing the information, even though he felt his head spinning slightly. He asked briefly, "And besides the head, she also has several broken ribs and a damaged lung," Dr. Phillips continued, checking the medical history. "A ruptured spleen, it had to be removed during surgery at night. There was internal bleeding, but we stopped it. A fractured left arm and multiple bruises." Alex covered his face with his hands for a moment, trying to digest all of this. It seemed unthinkable that all of this had happened to his Sarah, who had been smiling at him just 24 hours earlier as she left for her retreat. She had the operation," he said slowly, removing his hands. "So she's holding up for now. What's the prognosis?" The doctor sighed. "It's too early to make a prognosis. The first 48 hours after such injuries are critical. We are doing everything possible. We need to see how she will react. The brain swelling may increase, then we will have to take additional measures. The positive thing is that she is young, has a strong heart, and has a good chance of coping physically if there are no complications." "Can I see her?" Alex asked quietly. "Yes, of course. Just a warning. She's hooked up to machines. It looks scary," the doctor warned softly. Alex just nodded. Come what may, he had to see his wife. He stood up, and the doctor led him through the double doors into the intensive care unit. The room was full of flickering equipment. A monitor beeped monotonously in the corner to the right. And in the middle of all this equipment, on a hospital bed, lay Sarah. Alex involuntarily froze at the threshold. He barely recognized her. Her head was bandaged, her face was pale, a ventilator tube was on her lips. Her eyes were closed, her long eyelashes motionless. She seemed so small and defenseless among the pillows and wires. "Oh God," he blurted out. He moved forward stiffly and carefully touched her cold hand. Sarah's arm was in a splint, and Roman 4 line running up her forearm. Alex stroked her hand, feeling an agonizing mixture of love and pain. "Sarah." The doctor tactfully stepped aside, allowing him to be there for a minute. Alex squeezed his wife's hand a little tighter. "I'm here, darling. I'm close," he whispered, unable to hold back the tears that flowed down his cheeks. Sarah didn't answer, of course. Her chest rose and fell steadily under the pressure of the respirator. Alex noticed a dark purple bruise on her neck, probably from the seat belt. He swallowed hard. A minute later, the doctor gently touched him on the shoulder. "Mr. Miller, I need to ask you a few more questions, if you're ready." Alex looked at her blankly, then took his hand away from his wife and nodded. It took an effort to tear his gaze away from Sarah and back into the conference room. The doctor closed the door behind them. "The police have given us some information about the accident," the doctor began, leafing through the papers. "It may be hard for you to hear, but you need to know the circumstances." "I understand," Alex said hoarsely. He felt like he was in a nightmare from which he could not wake up. "The accident happened around 7 o'clock yesterday evening on the coast highway near Monterey," Dr. Phillips said. "The car your wife was riding in collided head-on with another car. The driver of the oncoming car is believed to have crossed into the oncoming lane. He most likely fell asleep at the wheel or lost control. Your wife was a passenger, and her seat belt was fastened, which probably saved her life on the spot. The driver sitting next to her. The doctor hesitated for a second. He was seriously injured. He was also taken to this hospital. Alex closed his eyes, imagining the horrific impact of two cars. He quietly clarified. The driver. Is he alive? As far as I know, yes, the doctor answered. He had a long operation at night. He is in critical condition. Now he is also in intensive care in another block. Alex nodded slowly. A strange dual emotion pierced his heart, either relief or disappointment. He didn't yet know who this person was, but he had almost no doubt that this was not just an acquaintance. However, did he want him dead? No. And even now, all his thoughts were about Sarah. The doctor continued. The driver of the oncoming car, the culprit of the accident, died on the spot. So legally, all questions will probably be closed by insurance claims. But the police may contact you to clarify information about your wife, the purpose of the trip, etc. Alex chuckled darkly. The police would want to know why she was where she was. A good question, and one he himself didn't have an answer to. I will answer what I can, he said quietly. The doctor nodded understandingly. The most important thing now is her condition. We are doing everything we can. You also need to conserve your strength. The wait may be long. In the intensive care unit, visitors are allowed in one at a time and only close relatives in short lines. But given your situation, we will try to give you the opportunity to be with her as much as possible. Thank you, doctor, Alex thanked automatically. Do you have a place to stay? A hotel? Relatives? The doctor asked. No, I just arrived, Alex replied, realizing that he hadn't thought about that at all. We can invite a social worker. He will help with temporary accommodation, the doctor suggested. Alex shook his head. No, thank you. I can handle it myself. Just. Can I sit by the ward for now, next to her? Of course, the doctor said softly. Just try to get some rest. If any information is needed or if there are any changes, we'll let you know right away. The doctor left him alone. Alex returned to the small waiting room near the intensive care unit and sat down on a chair. It was as if everything inside him had burned out. He covered his face with his hands, feeling that he was finally alone with his thoughts. He saw his wife, crippled, lying under the machines, and he knew she was there because of deception. How bitter and improbable everything had turned out. But he would have to endure that pain later. Now her life was hanging by a thread. He had to be there, no matter what, no matter the lies and secrets. Deep down, there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe if she came out of the coma, if she got better, they could talk. He would learn the whole truth from her, and maybe he would forgive her, if he could. For now, all that was left was to wait in the sterile silence of the hospital, listening to every click of the opening doors, flinching at every phone call. The hours of testing for him and for her were just beginning. Time dragged on unbearably. Alex would sit by Sarah's bed, holding her motionless hand, then go out into the hallway when the doctors asked him to leave the room for procedures. At some point, a nurse approached him, holding a transparent bag. Mr. Miller, these are your wife's personal belongings. They were handed over by the police. Alex stood up to greet her. The bag contained clothes and other small items, everything Sarah had with her at the time of the accident. He took the bag, thanked her quietly, and sat back down in the chair in the waiting room. Alex's hands trembled as he untied the bag. What fell into his lap was Sarah's folded jacket, the sleeve torn and bloody at the edges, her wallet, her phone with its cracked screen, car keys. His heart sank the keys to their family SUV, but she hadn't been in the car, so she must have taken them with her. A small makeup bag, sunglasses with a cracked frame. Alex carefully picked up his wife's iPhone. The screen was cracked, but it seemed to work. Pressing the button prompted him to enter a code. The little red battery icon was blinking. It was almost empty. Code. Several options immediately came to mind. He and his wife had once shared passwords, but after updates, she seemed to have changed the code. He tried Sarah's birthday first, no match. Then their anniversary also no match. His heart began to beat faster. Perhaps there was one more option left. Mike's, his son's, birthday. Many parents put children's dates. Alex carefully entered 6 digits. The screen blinked and unlocked. He exhaled slightly. The phone came to life, and notifications immediately poured in. Apparently, there was Wi-Fi in the hospital. Alex caught a glimpse of the list of unread messages on the screen, a few from himself. How was your flight? He'd sent them yesterday, thinking she was in New Mexico, but there had been no response. A couple more from Melanie, asking questions when she'd learned of the accident. But his gaze was fixed on another contact. The name John flashed above a dozen messages. John. Alex froze for a moment. The same John from the university? Or another one? He didn't remember her phone contact being just John before. Maybe it was labeled differently, if it was a colleague, for example. His fingers trembled as he clicked on the name, opening the correspondence. The lines of messages filled the screen, and from the very first phrases, it became clear that this was not a conversation with a colleague at all. Alex's heart sank as he began to read. Sarah, I'm flying out tomorrow morning. I can't believe we're doing this. John, I can't wait to see you. The hotel room is booked in your name, as agreed. Sarah, are you sure everything is okay with your business trip? Claire won't get suspicious. John, everything is under control. I told you I have a conference in San Francisco this weekend, so I'll be out of the house. Does Alex believe in your retreat? Sarah, yes, I have prepared all the details. He has no idea about anything. Next came smileys and hearts. Alex scrolled down, skipping a few lines, his eyes feverishly searching for the main thing. John, it's like our student years are back. I can't believe 12 years have passed. Sarah, but now we are free to live at least these few days for ourselves. I am all ablaze with the thought of seeing you, John. Alex's hands froze. He had no strength to read any further, but he couldn't stop. The lines, each of which brought a new sharp pain, flowed before his eyes. John, remember that beach we used to go to at sunset? I found a place like that here. You'll like it. Sarah, with you, any place will seem like paradise to me. He scrolled feverishly back to the earliest messages, presumably the moment they had reconnected. John had written first, on a spring evening 3 months ago. John, hi, Sarah. Found you here on Messenger by chance. Not sure if you remember me. Sarah, John, of course I remember. I can't even believe it was you. How many years have passed? 12. John, yes, time flies. How are you? I've often thought about you. What followed was a long exchange of messages in which they talked in general terms about their current lives. Alex scrolled through them, picking out individual phrases. 2 kids, work in an office. And I have 2, live in Austin. So John and his family lived just a few hours away in Austin, Texas. Alex's heart sank. He had been so close all this time. The correspondence continued. John, you know, I was remembering our last conversation. I'm so sorry that everything turned out that way. Sarah, don't apologize. We were young and stupid. I thought about you too. John, really? I was afraid you had forgotten me. Sarah, I haven't forgotten. Sometimes I look through old photos. I wondered where you were, if you were happy. John, I made a mistake then. I let you go. Alex's soul was turned over by these revelations. He saw how quickly their conversations became more and more personal, how they moved on to memories of their days together in college, how confessions like, "You have always been my support," and compliments, "Sarah, you were the best thing that ever happened to me." Then there were the details of the meeting. Sarah's flight number to San Jose, an agreement to meet at the airport, a description of the blue SUV John had rented. It all read like someone else's plans, but unfortunately, they were real. At some point, the screen went dark, the battery died. Alex remained sitting, staring at the dead phone, as if all the letters were forever imprinted in his brain. He felt a nasty, cold anger rising inside him, mixed with all-encompassing pain. He was being deceived. The wife with whom he shared his life was deceiving him systematically, carefully, with someone else's help. And this is the result. A romantic trip turned into an accident, a hospital. Death? He clenched his fists, trying to breathe evenly. Blood roared in his ears. Alex closed his eyes, remembering what he had read. John, his college boyfriend. Yes, there was no longer any doubt. It was him. So they had found each other again, 12 years later. The important thing was that they weren't just reminiscing about the past in a friendly way, they had resumed their relationship behind his back. A friend will cover for him if anything happens. He has no idea. The phrase echoed loudly in his skull. A friend. Who? Did someone close to Sarah know and cover up her lie? Who? Emily? She did know about the retreat, but Emily seemed genuinely unaware of California. Maybe another friend? Or a sister? No, Julia looked confused on the phone. Or was she just that good at acting? Alex felt like he couldn't get enough air. He stood up and went out into the corridor automatically. He needed to step away, calm down, otherwise he could break down. He only went down to the first floor, where the half-empty hospital cafeteria was. He took a glass of cold water from the cooler and took a few greedy sips. His mind feverishly drew pictures. Here is Sarah sitting on a plane, flying to her lover. Here they meet at the airport, kissing, laughing. Here they are driving along the coastal highway, the wind in their hair, music, adrenaline. And suddenly a blow, the grinding of metal. Alex loudly put the glass on the table, cutting off the tormenting images. Tears choked him, but anger overcame him. He felt a strong desire to break something, even John's phone, if it were at hand. Or better yet, meet this John and punch him in the face. But John was now lying in this same hospital, barely alive, according to the doctor. Never mind, if he recovers, he'll have a talk. And with whom else would that same friend who helped? Alex climbed back up and sat down in the waiting room across from Sarah's room. His mind was torn between two extremes, anger at the betrayal and fear for her life. He couldn't just erase love in an instant. Even now, knowing the whole truth, he was here with her. And yet, to deceive him so shamelessly. How would he look her in the eye if she regained consciousness? Alex leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and covered his face with his hands. Maybe he should call someone. At that moment, the phone in his hand vibrated not Soren's, but his own, forgotten for a while. He looked at the screen. It was Melanie, the neighbor who stayed with the children. Alex took a deep breath and replied, "Hi, Mel." "Alex, how are you?" Melanie's voice was cautious. "Are you okay? How's Sarah?" He felt a pang of shame. Melanie was worried, and he still hadn't written back that morning. "Sorry. Everything is in disarray here. Sarah is in a coma. Her condition is serious," he said hoarsely. "Oh God, forgive me." Melanie was clearly confused. "What happened?" "They just told me it was an accident, but how?" "She was supposed to be at yoga." Alex squeezed the phone. Here was another person who believed Sarah's version. "It's a long story," he answered dully. "I'll tell you later." "Okay? The main thing is that you hold on. If necessary, I'll stay with the children for as long as necessary. Don't worry," she said quickly. "Thank you so much, Mel," he said sincerely, softening. "How are they?" "They're worried, of course. We said Mom got sick on the trip." Melanie paused. "I decided not to scare them ahead of time, but Mike seems to guess that's something serious. When will you be back? Maybe it's important for them to see you." Alex felt a new wave of guilt. The kids, they needed him, and he was here, hundreds of miles away. "I don't know yet. If Sarah's condition stabilizes or becomes clear, I might be able to come back for a day," he said uncertainly. "I'll stay with them as long as they need to," Melanie repeated firmly. "Don't worry, they're fine. The main thing is that you can hold out there. And if you can, at least get a couple of hours of sleep, okay?" "I'll try," he answered wearily. They said goodbye. Alex put the phone down. There was no longer any doubt. Life had split into before and after. And in this new after, he would never be the same trusting husband again. But first, he had to survive the next hours and days. He looked up at the door of the intensive care unit where Sarah lay. Well, the truth had come out. All that was left was to wait for events to unfold and perhaps prepare for the most difficult conversation of their lives if she survived. The night was sleepless. Alex tried to lie down on the hospital cot provided for relatives, but sleep would not come. Thoughts about John Carter kept spinning in his head. That same John, Sarah's first serious boyfriend, whom she had once casually mentioned. Back then, many years ago, these were just memories of youth. Alex could not imagine that this man's name would pop up in their lives again, and in such a way. Lying in the semi-darkness, he recalled snippets of conversations with his wife. Somewhere in the early years of their marriage, they had once talked about the past. Sarah had mentioned that she had dated a guy in college for quite a while. It seemed that she had even thought about marrying him, but it hadn't worked out. He had gone away to study further, and they had broken up. "It's probably for the best," Sarah had said with a laugh. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have met you." Alex had simply put his arm around her, and the conversation had quickly turned to jokes. Yes, John's name had come up, John Carter. Alex remembered seeing a tall, fair-haired guy standing next to a young Sarah in an old college photo. She'd explained, "That's John. We took that picture at graduation. He's probably in California now." They never returned to the subject again. And now the picture came together. The former lovers had found each other again. How exactly only God knew. Maybe through social networks, maybe they had accidentally crossed paths at a high school reunion or in correspondence using old contacts. He racked his brains over this at night. Had they really been looking for each other for a long time? Or was it John who had been the first to write to her, awakening old feelings? Alex remembered how Sarah had often typed something on her phone in recent months, and now he wondered. Perhaps she had been corresponding with him, with that very John. He imagined how, after he fell asleep, she would lie next to the shining screen, reading confessions from her former lover. These thoughts burned inside, but he couldn't get rid of them. In the end, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that Sarah's past has burst into their present, destroying it. Alex felt a pang of bitterness. Had she been secretly yearning for that other one all this time? Otherwise, why risk everything for a fleeting meeting? Was their family really less important to her than a memory of the past? He tried to understand her motives, but he couldn't. Yes, first love is a powerful thing, but 10 years of marriage, children. How could you risk it for a ghostly memory? Hadn't she been good with him? He thought back to the last few months. Had he missed any signs of dissatisfaction, boredom? Sarah, of course, sometimes complained about the monotony of life. Home, work, children, rare weekends. But this is the normal life of any family. Everyone has crises, but they are resolved together, and not by running back to an ex-boyfriend. The pain of knowing he had been deceived pierced him again. Alex stood up and walked down the dark corridor. The pre-dawn sky was visible in the windows. The third day had begun. He stopped at the window, leaning his forehead against the cool glass. There, far to the west, was the same ocean where they had gone. What was Sarah thinking about, looking at the waves next to John? Was she thinking about her husband and children, or was she completely immersed in the illusion of returning to her youth? Alex clenched his fists. Two feelings fought in his chest. On the one hand, anger and resentment. How could she do this? On the other, love was still there. He couldn't just switch it off with a flick of the switch. The habit of caring, worrying, loving, it still lived in him, despite the betrayal. At that moment, Alex made a firm decision. Whatever answers Sarah had hidden in her soul, he had to get them. He wouldn't let it remain a secret. If she survived, they would have an honest, heart-to-heart talk. If not, no, he pushed that thought away. She had to survive. But there were those who could shed light now. Julia, Sarah's sister, and Nicole, the friend Sarah had mentioned. Alex suspected that they knew more than they were letting on, and he intended to find out as soon as he had the chance. He returned to his wife's room. The same silence, the same measured squeak of the equipment. Behind the glass, Sarah lay motionless, unaware of the pain and chaos her actions had caused. Alex ran his hand over his face and sighed wearily. He wanted to scream at her and hug her, press her to himself at the same time. But for now, he could only wait patiently and seek answers from those who were conscious. Without closing his eyes, he waited for dawn. Resolutely taking the phone, Alex prepared himself for difficult conversations that were long overdue. Alex spent the rest of the day in a fog. Hours passed, but Sarah did not regain consciousness. The doctor came in a couple of times, reporting that there was no change. In the evening, the nurses persuaded Alex to sleep a little in the rest room for relatives, assuring him that they would wake him up at the slightest news. He reluctantly agreed his strength was running out. The night passed anxiously. As soon as dawn broke, Alex woke up, feeling a heaviness in his soul. Yesterday's discoveries had not gone anywhere. It was not a bad fantasy. He was still sitting in the hospital, his wife was in a coma, and around him was a web of lies. He decided he couldn't remain in the dark about the extent of the deception any longer. It had a name, John. There were guesses about who knew about it. He needed to find out for sure. The first thing he did was dial Julia, Sarah's sister. The phone was picked up almost immediately, as if she had not been asleep. "Alex?" The sister's voice sounded tense. "Hi, Jules," he said hoarsely. "Sorry for calling early." "Nothing," she answered quickly. "How's Sarah? Any news?" "No change yet," he said wearily. "Listen, Jules, I have to ask you, and please be honest with me." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. "Of course, ask," Julia said carefully. Alex gripped the phone tighter. He had to pause, gathering his courage. "Did you know that Sarah wasn't really in New Mexico? That she was going to California to meet?" He paused. "John?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the line. A few seconds of silence. Then a quiet, guilty voice. "Alex, forgive me." Everything inside him broke. "Here it is." "So she knew," he whispered, closing his eyes. His heart ached with new pain. It was finally confirmed. His sister had deceived him, too. I didn't find out right away," Julia said quickly, feeling his silent reproach. "Sarah told me herself a couple of weeks ago. She said that John had shown up, that they were talking. I tried to reason with her honestly. I told her not to do anything stupid. But she had apparently already made up her mind then. She said that she just wanted to see him, to put an end to the past. She even used the word closure, to complete the gestalt, as they say now." I asked, "What about Alex, the children?" She answered, "Of course, I love them. But if I don't do it now, I'll regret it all my life." It was as if she was obsessed with this idea. Alex smiled bitterly. "Closure? Are you serious?" She called it finding closure from the past. "Yes, something like that," the sister confirmed plaintively. I didn't believe her completely either, but she asked me not to tell anyone. She said that it was a one-time crazy act, that she would come back later and everything would be as before. "And you agreed?" Alex's voice rang with bitterness. "Jules, how could you? We were never strangers. You know how I've always felt about you. Was it really that hard to open my eyes?" There were sobs on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just didn't know what to do. She's my little sister. She asked me to trust her. I hoped that it would really be limited to one visit, that she would come to her senses. Just a visit." Alex felt himself boiling. He stood up and began to pace the empty corridor. "So you deliberately allowed her to sleep with another man behind my back, hoping that this would cure her of her past love." Julia sobbed even harder. "I have nothing to say in my defense. I am terribly guilty before you. I thought it was not my business to interfere with your family with revelations. I thought that Sarah herself would admit everything later or realize that she was wrong." "None of your business," he flared up, lowering his voice only because he was still in the hospital. "So letting her cheat on her husband in peace is none of your business, but saving her from this mistake and maybe saving her life is also none of your business." Alex. Julia cried, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I didn't know it would happen, I swear." Alex stopped, closing his eyes and trying to contain his rage. He felt sorry for his sister too. She was clearly beside herself with guilt and grief for Sarah. But there was nothing he could do. The fact remained a fact. "Okay," he finally exhaled. "Please warn your parents. You didn't tell them about John, did you?" "No, of course not," she breathed. "Oh my God, Mom and Dad don't know anything at all. I only told them that Sarah was on retreat and there was an accident. They wanted to go, but I talked them out of it. I said you were there and would tell them the news. Okay? They don't need to know anything extra now," Alex said decisively. Sarah's parents were elderly, and the shock of the truth could finish them off. If everything works out, then we'll think about whether to tell them or not." "Yes," Julia agreed quietly. "Alex, how are you coping there alone? Maybe I should fly over?" "Not yet," he snapped. "Nothing's happening here yet except waiting." "I feel so guilty before you, brother," she sobbed. "Jules, stop," he said tiredly. The words brother from her suddenly cut him. For the first time he felt distant. "Nothing can be fixed now. Let's move on. I have to go. Sarah's room is nearby. I want to be there." "I understand." She gave in sadly. "Hold on, please. I'm praying for her and for you too." "Thank you," Alex said dully and ended the call. He leaned his forehead against the cold wall of the corridor, closing his eyes. Another support had collapsed. Julia, who was as close to him as a sister, had lied. At least she had apologized. But to forgive this, God knows if he can. There was one more figure left, the friend. Whoever it was, he intended to find out. Yesterday, while scrolling through Sarah's phone, he noticed a missed call from someone named Nicole. The name was familiar. Nicole was a colleague and an old friend of Sarah's. They sometimes went to lunch together. Alex knew her briefly. She had visited their house on holidays. He also remembered that on the eve of their departure, Sarah had mentioned, "If anything happens, call Nicole. She knows where I am." It had sounded innocent, then like, if he couldn't get in touch with his wife, let him ask Nicole. It was a strange hint, and Alex hadn't attached any significance to it then, and was even surprised why he would call his friend if Sarah had promised to get in touch herself. Now everything fell into place. Nicole was apparently aware of her plan. Without hesitation, Alex dialed Nicole's number. She answered quickly, anxiously. "Sarah, is that you?" She must have seen the California area code and thought it was Sarah calling. "This is Alex," he said coldly. "Nicole, hello." "Oh, Alex." Nicole's voice was worried. "How is Sarah? I found out about the accident from Emily. She wrote to everyone. I'm just in shock. What's wrong with her?" "In a coma, in critical condition," he snapped. "Nicole, you know why she ended up in California, right?" There was a tense pause on the other end of the line. "Alex, listen." "No, listen to me," he interrupted angrily, even surprised by his own abruptness. "I know about John, and I know that Sarah went there to spend time with him. Question, how long have you known about this?" Nicole cursed quietly under her breath. "Damn, so you know." "Now, yes," Alex smiled bitterly, "and I wonder how many people around me knew about it, except me." "Not many," Nicole answered, almost in a whisper. "Just me and Julia, as far as I know." "Amazing." Alex felt his insides go cold with anger. "So you planned an entire operation?" "It wasn't me," Nicole said excitedly. "You know, I told her right away that it was crazy, but she was possessed. She said she had to do it, at least once to see him again, otherwise she would regret it all her life. She said she missed those feelings of youth, that she wanted to feel 20 again, to understand if it was in vain that she let John go back then. First love, all that." "And didn't she think about regretting her husband and children?" Alex blurted out. "I thought so, of course," Nicole sighed. "She loves you very much, Alex. It was like an obsession. First love it apparently hasn't completely died out. Don't you dare say that she loves us, he snapped coldly. A loving person wouldn't do that. Nicole fell silent. Then she said quietly, "You're right. I have nothing to say, except, I'm sorry I didn't stop her. If you knew how it would end, would you have stopped it?" He smiled joylessly. "Of course," she whispered hotly. "I'm beside myself. I feel terrible." "You feel terrible," Alex echoed. "Can you imagine how I feel?" Nicole fell silent again. Tears could be heard in her breath. "Alex, I understand that there is no forgiveness. If I can help with anything now, I'm ready at any cost." "Nothing anymore," he said quietly. "You kept her secret, but you couldn't keep her safe." "Please forgive me," Nicole cried. Alex closed his eyes and tiredly rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Okay, enough. I don't have time for this now. I need to think about what to do next. With all this—" "Yes, of course," she replied. "If you need anything, I'm always." He didn't let me finish, said goodbye briefly, and hung up. The phone almost cracked in his clenched palm. Alex returned to Sarah's room. It was getting light outside. He felt 10 years older. Now he knew everything except one thing. What would he do with this truth next? Day turned to evening, then night again. The 24 hours or so in the hospital became one endless stream of time for Alex. He ate little and barely slept, afraid to miss the slightest change. But Sarah's condition remained the same. In the afternoon, when the doctors had finished their rounds, Alex was allowed to stay at his wife's bedside for the first time. The machines hummed quietly in the intensive care unit. The nurse adjusted the Roman 4 and left them alone, promising to check in later. Alex pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He looked at Sarah. She was still lying motionless under the same measured machine sounds. Her face was a little less pale than yesterday, but still seemed alien because of the tubes and bandages. For a few minutes, he just sat in silence, not knowing where to start, talking to his wife who couldn't hear anything. But the desire to speak out became unbearable. Alex carefully took Sarah's hand, avoiding the place where the pulse sensor was attached. "Hello, Sarah," he began quietly, feeling a lump in his throat. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll talk." He paused, collecting his thoughts. Looking at her calm, almost sleeping face, it was hard to imagine everything that had happened. As if this was a different Sarah, not the one who had joked with him in the kitchen 2 days ago. "I found out," Alex finally exhaled. "I found out about you and John. Can you imagine? I even remembered his name, even though you only mentioned him a couple of times in conversations about your youth. I never thought he was a threat to us. You always said that you loved only me." He had to pause, his voice trembling. He ran his hand over his face and continued. "Why, Sarah, why did you do this? Was everything really that bad for us? I thought we were happy. 10 years of marriage, children. Yes, routine, yes, tiredness, but that's normal. Did I really let you go so much?" Alex fell silent, listening to the steady beep of the monitor. Of course, there was no answer. "If you wanted a thrill, you could have talked to me. We could have found a way to bring back the spark," he smiled sadly. "I don't know. We could have gone somewhere together, and you chose to escape for a couple of days to a fairy tale from the past." His fingers unconsciously stroked her cold hand. "How could you lie to me, huh?" he whispered, and tears sounded in his voice. "I trusted you, more than myself. I would give my life if only you were happy, and you did this." Excitement was building inside him. Alex sat up, hunched over the bed. "There's so much I want to ask you, you know," he said quietly, in a strangled voice. "When, how long ago did this start? Do you love him? More than me? Or is this just a blip? How could you do this, knowing you were risking everything? The children, our family." Tears ran down his cheeks and fell onto the white hospital blanket. He didn't wipe them away. "I'm angry. Damn it, I'm so angry at you right now, Sarah," Alex exhaled, squeezing her hand. "But you know what's the worst thing? I'm standing here praying to God for only one thing, for you to wake up. How can I be torn between resentment and the fear of losing you? His chest heaved, and he lowered his head, pressing Sarah's hand to his forehead. Do you hear me? If you hear me, fight. Do you hear me? Pull through. At least for the sake of the children. They are waiting for you. They think that mom is just sick and will get better soon. They need you. They really need you. He took a breath, trying to speak more evenly. They say Mikey didn't want to talk to anyone yesterday. Katie cries at night. And what am I going to tell them if? His voice broke, and he barely pulled himself together. No, not if. You have to survive, okay? You have to. Alex leaned back in his chair again, wiping his face with a trembling hand. If you wake up, he said quietly after a minute. I don't know what's next for us. Honestly, I want to say that I'll forgive you if you just come back. But I don't know if I can. I guess I can, just because I love you. Despite everything, damn it, I do. He smiled bitterly through his tears. It's weird to say that when you're lying here because of your own lies, but it's true. He remembered 1,000 little things, the way Sarah frowned when she concentrated, the way she laughed at silly comedies, the way she kissed her children goodnight. He remembered how on his 30th birthday she had thrown him a surprise party, inviting friends over secretly and baking a cake herself, a little crooked but the most delicious in the world. He remembered her happy laughter when he, amazed, carried her in his arms around the living room among the balloons and crackers. Such moments were priceless. All of this was part of his life, a part of her that he treasured. You can't die now, do you hear me? Alex said more firmly. We have to sort this all out. Have a good fight, yell at each other, then maybe try to glue it all together or get a divorce, I don't know. But not like this, not like this. Don't leave me with nothing but questions. He leaned down and very carefully touched his lips to her cold forehead, avoiding the bandages. Please, Sarah, come back. I can't do this. The children can't live without you. His voice had completely gone hoarse. He sat with his head bowed next to her, crying quietly, no longer holding back. The nurse found him in this state when she returned to check his indicators. Mr. Miller, she called softly, is everything all right? Alex straightened up, quickly wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Yes, I'm sorry, he answered dully. The nurse looked at him sympathetically. You can talk to her as much as you like. Some studies show that comatose patients sometimes hear the voices of loved ones. This may help. He just nodded. Thank you. That's what I do. The medical worker checked the Roman 4 and wrote something down on the chart. Before leaving, she smiled encouragingly. Don't lose hope. When the door closed behind her, Alex turned back to Sarah. He didn't know if she'd heard a word, but deep down he hoped she had. Maybe his voice would reach her consciousness. He sat there for a long time, holding her hand, until he realized he was shaking from exhaustion and tension. He stood up, carefully put her hand back in place. One last look at her, and he left the room, letting the tears that were blurring his eyes flow in the corridor. On the third day of waiting, when the morning was beginning to glow with a pale light outside the hospital windows, Alex's phone rang. The number that appeared was unfamiliar, long distance. Alex, exhausted by insomnia and worries, hesitated for a second, but still answered. Hello? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, and someone's breathing could be heard. Then a female voice, quiet and tense. Hello? Is this Alex Miller? Yes, it's me, he responded cautiously. Who am I speaking to? My name is Claire. Claire Carter, the interlocutor said after a pause. It's probably strange for you to hear me now. I'm John Carter's wife. Alex felt like the floor was slipping out from under his feet. He gripped the phone tighter. John's wife, he echoed, shocked. Yes, Claire's voice was on the verge of breaking down. The same John who, with your wife. I understand, Alex said quickly. His heart began to beat faster. Claire, how did you find my number? Through social media, she admitted. I knew your wife's name, Sarah Miller, from a police report. I found her page, and then yours. I hope you don't mind me calling. No, no, it's all right, he answered quickly. I'm glad that we were able to get in touch. To be honest, I wanted to get in touch with you too, but I didn't know how. It must have been difficult going through the hospital. Claire quietly agreed. There was an awkward pause. Alex was the first to break the silence. How? How is John? Claire hesitated for a moment. He is alive. In serious condition, but surgeons say there is a chance. He has a broken spine, a serious head injury. He is in a medically induced coma to stabilize his condition. Sarah, too, Alex said dully. Head injury, brain surgery. She's been unconscious for 3 days now. I'm so sorry, she said sincerely. This is all terrible. Alex felt his anger suddenly give way to exhausted despair. In this strange woman, he now felt a kindred spirit, paradoxically. Yes, terrible. Claire took heart. I don't know exactly what happened between them. Perhaps you've figured it out now. Yes, Alex exhaled. I found Sarah's correspondence with your husband. A whole romantic weekend, secretly from us. Claire smiled bitterly. So I'm not crazy. Deep down, I felt something was wrong. John had been kind of distant the last few months, but I thought it was work, stress. It turns out it's simpler. Alex nodded, holding the phone to his ear. Sarah has changed too. I attributed it to fatigue, everyday life. We all do that. I guess we don't want to notice the obvious. Probably, she repeated quietly. They were silent for a moment. Then Claire asked, if it's not a secret, what did Sarah tell you where she was going? To a yoga retreat in New Mexico. Cunning, she sighed. And John told me he was flying to a conference in San Francisco. He often travels for work. I wasn't surprised. They thought of everything, Alex concluded sadly. If it weren't for the accident, we might never have found out. But what happened happened, Claire's voice wavered. And now, I don't even know what to do. Us? He asked again, understanding what she meant. I mean, you and me, she explained quickly. We've unwittingly found ourselves in the same situation. I honestly don't know why I'm calling. I guess just to talk to someone who might actually understand. Alex felt a strange relief. I am glad you called. I need it too, I think. Because I hide the truth from my loved ones' children, parents, no one knows the details. I have no one to share with. Exactly, she quickly picked up. The same situation. I can't tell my mother or my friends. Hi, my husband broke up with his mistress. It's 2. She didn't finish, but Alex understood. Of course, I have someone to take my anger out on John himself when he wakes up. If he wakes up, there was concern and suppressed anger in her voice. The words hit him like a blow. Alex realized, yes, it was useless to blame Sarah. She might not come to her senses. He swallowed the lump in his throat. If she doesn't survive, I'll never even hear an answer as to why this happened. Yes, Claire whispered. I understand you, he sighed. You have the right to be angry with him. And you're looking at her, Claire responded. I'm angry, Alex admitted. But now the anger has gone somewhere. There's only pain left. I want her to live. And then, I don't know. I want John to survive too, she admitted. Even though I probably hate him already, but we have 2 children. Do you have children too? He asked in surprise. Yes, a boy and a girl, 10 and 7 years old, she answered wearily. For their sake. I don't even know what to tell them. They still think that Daddy is being treated for an accident at work. I have an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, Alex said quietly. I don't tell them anything either. I said Mom got sick. They didn't know she was in California at all. Claire smiled bitterly. It's crazy. Such symmetry. There's a boy and a girl here and there. Yes, indeed, he confirmed gloomily. For a few moments they were both silent, digesting the situation. Then Alex asked, Claire, are you here in California now? Yes, I flew in as soon as they reported the accident. I'm in the hospital now in San Jose, practically living here in a hotel nearby, she answered. Alex winced. Wait, so you're here? Of course, she was apparently surprised by his reaction. And you thought I was calling from home? No, I've been here since day one. Oh God, he suddenly realized that perhaps they had been almost next to each other all this time. They just hadn't crossed paths. I've been here all this time too, in St. Francis. In the same hospital, Claire was amazed. But John was transferred to the University Medical Center across the street. I see, Alex said. He remembered seeing a sign for University Medical Center on the building next door. That meant John was there. I didn't know that. I see. Claire paused. Look, maybe we can meet. What do you think about that? The sentence hung in the air. Alex thought about it. On the one hand, it was strange to meet the wife of his wife's lover. On the other hand, that voice on the phone had become almost familiar to him in a matter of minutes. The understanding was so deep. I think so, if it makes it easier for you. I would, she admitted, but only if you would too. Okay, he decided. Let's do it on neutral territory, maybe across the street. There's a coffee shop at the hotel. I know her. In an hour, would that work? Claire suggested. Yes, Alex agreed. They said goodbye briefly. After hanging up, Alex found himself thinking about something other than the hospital room for the first time in days. He felt anxious about the meeting, but also a strange relief that he would no longer be alone in his misfortune. At least for another hour, he could avoid the torment of waiting by the bed and try to figure out what was happening together with the person who had shared this absurd role of a deceived life partner with him. After a brief meeting with Claire at a cafe, Alex returned to the hospital by midday. They talked for almost an hour over a cup of coffee, sharing their experiences and supporting each other as best they could. The conversation distracted him from his dark thoughts a little, but as soon as he left the cafe, reality hit him with renewed vigor. A few hours later, Alex returned to the hospital. As soon as he reached the nurse's station, he noticed a commotion. A red light was flashing in the hallway outside Sarah's room, and medics were running in and out. His heart sank. He rushed forward. What happened? He shouted, trying to look into the room. Mr. Miller, wait here. One of the nurses grabbed him by the shoulders, not letting him in. Sympathy and tension were visible in her eyes. Sarah has a complication. Please, let the doctors work. Alex seemed paralyzed. Behind the glass partition of the ward, he saw people in robes bending around his wife's body. The doctor's sharp commands were heard. Charge! Discharge! Alex froze, feeling the world swim before his eyes. Sarah, no. He whispered, pressing his forehead to the glass. He was shaking all over. It seemed like an eternity until the doctor inside looked up and checked his watch. One of the machines was making a long, monotonous sound. The nurses began to turn off the equipment. The door of the ward opened, and Dr. Phillips came out with a tired, mournful face. He approached Alex. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. The heart stopped. The words were hanging in the air. Alex could no longer hear them. He staggered. The nurse held him by the elbow. Please, sit down. No. He exhaled, as if refusing to believe. No, wait. She fought. You said there was a chance. The voice broke into a scream. The doctor lowered his eyes. Probably a repeated stroke due to cerebral edema. The combination of injuries. Sir, I'm very sorry. Alex shook his head in shock. He didn't notice the tears burning his face. No, no, he whispered silently. He was allowed into the room. Most of the equipment had already been turned off. Sarah was still lying there, only now the breathing tube had been removed. She seemed to be just sleeping, a little pale. Alex approached slowly, almost unable to feel his legs. He sat down on the chair next to her, taking her already cooling hand in his. His chest was squeezed by such pain as he had never experienced in his life. Tears flowed like a stream. He sobbed quietly, bending over her body, not embarrassed by the doctors or anyone. At that moment, the whole world ceased to exist. The medical staff tactfully kept their distance, allowing him to say goodbye. Alex didn't know how much time had passed. It didn't fit in his head that this was the end. "I asked you," he said barely audibly, "I asked you not to leave." Finally, the nurse's soft voice brought him out of his trance. "Mr. Miller, excuse me, some formalities need to be completed." Alex slowly raised his head. His eyes were burning, his throat was numb. He gently placed his wife's hand on the bed and stood up. Is it all over?" he asked helplessly, looking at the doctor. He nodded. "Time of death 11:17. I'm very sorry." Alex closed his eyes at these words. The doctor continued cautiously. "We'll need you to sign some paperwork about what to do next. If you'd like, we can call someone close to you to support you." He shook his head. "No need. I can handle it." He was led to a table in the hallway. The papers blurred before his eyes. He signed where asked, consent to release the body. He heard his own voice as if from the outside, answering the questions of the doctor and the coordinator. Yes, cremation. Yes, he will inform about the burial place. No, there are no complaints about the hospital. I understand everything. About 20 minutes passed. Then everyone fell behind. He stood again, leaning his back against the cold wall. A nurse came up and carefully handed him a small plastic bag. "Here are your wife's things that she was wearing. The list is attached." Alex took the package mechanically. Inside was Sarah's gold ring, his wedding band on a chain she wore on her finger instead, and a pair of small earrings. That was all that was left. He clutched the package to his chest, like a treasure. Can I have another minute with her?" he asked the nurse hoarsely. "Of course," she nodded. He returned to the ward. "Goodbye, my girl," he whispered at last. He stroked her cheek one last time. Then he straightened up and, feeling the world around him crumbling, left the room. Sarah was gone forever. An hour later, sitting alone on a bench at the deserted entrance to the hospital, Alex dialed Claire's number with a trembling hand. They had spoken that morning, and she had asked for news. Claire answered almost immediately. "Hello, Alex?" It took him a few seconds to get the words out. "Sarah died." There was silence on the other end, then a soft cry. Claire tried to say something, but could only say, "I'm so sorry. God, Alex, forgive me." "Thank you," he whispered, feeling a new lump in his throat. "If there's anything I can do," she began, but he interrupted. "Everything is fine. I just wanted to let you know. Thank you for being in touch." "Hang in there, please," Claire said sincerely. "If you want to talk, or I'm always here." "I know. Thank you," he repeated. They said goodbye, and Alex dropped the phone, covering his face with his hands. The world was completely empty, but he still had things to do ahead of him. He forced himself to get up and walked slowly to the parking lot to go back to the hotel and start preparing for the hardest part of the journey home. The post-mortem formalities took several days. Alex stayed in San Jose until all the formalities were completed. An autopsy had to be performed, a death certificate issued. He signed papers almost mechanically, answered questions from the police and doctors. Everything happened in a fog. The hardest part was calling Sarah's parents in Oklahoma. Alex called her father while he was still in the hospital, just after he had regained his composure. Mr. Roberts' voice was shaking with worry. "Alex, son, how is she? What do the doctors say?" Alex gathered all his willpower to utter the terrible words. "Dad, Sarah is gone. She died today." There was a ringing silence on the other end of the line. Then came a muffled groan and sobbing. Apparently, the father had passed the phone to his wife because the next person to speak was Mrs. Roberts, Sarah's mother, through her tears. "Alex, how is that possible? Our girl." Alex himself burst into tears, trying to console them somehow. "I'm sorry. I did everything I could. The doctors tried, but the injuries were too severe." "Oh, God," the mother sobbed. "This can't be. She's so young." Sarah's father picked up the phone again, his voice having aged dramatically in the minutes. We'll come. We need to bury our daughter. Tell me what to do." Alex understood that at their age, a long trip could be difficult. He carefully suggested, "Her body is in California now. I can arrange for cremation here on site and have the ashes shipped to you in Oklahoma for burial as you wish." The parents consulted among themselves for a short time through their tears. Then Mrs. Roberts said quietly, "Yes, it will probably be better this way. We are not young anymore. It is a long way to fly. And you, Alex, will you come?" He hesitated. He had to go back to Dallas to his children to explain everything to them. Another trip to the funeral seemed too much for him now. "If you can forgive me, I probably won't be able to come right away," he said with difficulty. "But I'll send the ashes as soon as possible, and I'll visit you later, I promise." "We understand," the father said dully. "Take care of your grandchildren. They're all we have left of her now." These words cut Alex hard. Yes, the children are a living reminder of Sarah. Yes, of course. I'll take care of it. They agreed that he would give them the details of the shipment. The parents thanked him through tears for all he had done. Mrs. Roberts added quietly, "Alex, darling, we know how much you loved Sarah. Thank you for the years of happiness you gave her." At this point, Alex couldn't stand it any longer. "Sorry, I can't talk now." In the following days, Alex arranged for cremation. He briefly considered keeping some of the ashes for himself so that he could bury them in a local cemetery in Dallas, where he and the children could visit their mother. But he decided that Sarah should return home to her parents. He wanted to fully honor the wishes of his wife's family. The urn containing Sarah's ashes was given to him by a San Jose funeral home. It was a small, simple capsule. The metal plate of the urn was engraved with the words, "Sarah Miller, 1988 to 2023. Seeing these dates, Alex realized the finality. Between them was her entire life. He carefully packed the urn into a sturdy shipping container. The ashes had to be sent via a special delivery courier service. Alex took the parcel to the post office in person, holding onto it with both hands as he walked, as if he was afraid to drop it. Filling out the declaration, he felt a tremor. Writing "human ashes" in the contents column turned out to be almost unbearable. Finally, all the stamps and documents were completed. The postal worker assured me that the shipment would arrive within a couple of days. Alex stood for another minute, watching as the box was taken away into the depths of the department. That evening, he flew home to Dallas, a small suitcase of her belongings on his lap. His heart was heavy, but he still had another painful mission ahead of him, telling his children that their mother was gone. Returning home to Dallas was no less of an ordeal than the days in the hospital. Alex walked into the empty house late at night, tired mentally and physically. The children rushed to meet him. Melanie had been babysitting them, as promised, until he arrived. Mike and Katie immediately noticed his tear-stained eyes and sad face. 8-year-old Mike frowned. "Dad, where is Mom? You promised to bring Mom." 5-year-old Katie, looking at her father, also became wary. "Mommy hasn't arrived. Is she still sick?" Alex felt his throat tighten. He knelt down in front of the children and hugged them both. "Kids, we need to talk." Melanie tactfully walked into another room, leaving the family alone. Alex sat his son and daughter down on the sofa and sat down in front of them, trying to remain calm, although everything inside was shaking. "Remember, I said that Mom got very sick on the trip," he began quietly. Mike nodded, his eyes already shining with tears. It seemed he instinctively knew what was coming next. "Yes, the doctors had a very hard time treating her," Alex continued, holding Katie's small hand. "Mom had very serious wounds, and—" His voice broke, and he cleared his throat. "Mom tried very hard to get better, but her body was too weak. And so, she died." "Don't say that, Dad," Mike almost screamed, his lips trembling. "No, Mommy's not dead. You're lying." "No, son." Alex himself began to cry, pulling the resisting boy towards himself. "I'm sorry. Mom is no longer with us." Katie, not yet fully understanding the meaning of the word, died. Nevertheless, seeing the reactions of her brother and father, burst into tears. I want to go to my mother. Where is my mother? Alex hugged the children tightly, rocking them and repeating, I'm here. I'm with you. I love you very much. We'll get through this. That evening, the three of them cried for a long time, huddled together on the couch. Melanie brought the children water, helped them put them to bed. The questions kept pouring in. Why, how, couldn't the doctors save him? Alex answered as best he could, explaining in simple terms that sometimes bad things happen and it's no one's fault. The next few weeks were a series of tasks that needed to be done. Sarah had life insurance from her job, and Alex was busy filing the claim. The insurance company required a death certificate and some paperwork. He mailed it all in and waited for the results. At the same time, he was dealing with medical bills from the San Jose hospital. Fortunately, most of the expenses were covered by their health insurance. Also, since the accident was the fault of another driver, the at-fault driver's insurance company contacted Alex, offering compensation. But he had neither the energy nor the desire to delve into these financial and legal intricacies. He hired a lawyer on the advice of a colleague to handle the necessary formalities. Meanwhile, life demanded new solutions. Alex realized that he couldn't work the same way as before. Previously, he and Sarah shared responsibilities. One took the children to school and kindergarten, the other picked them up. They decided according to the situation. Now everything fell on him alone. His boss at the firm was understanding of the tragedy. Alex was given a month of unpaid leave on top of his bereavement leave to sort out his family affairs. During this time, Alex rethought a lot. Every morning he woke up early, made breakfast for the kids. Sarah used to do this while he was getting ready for work. Now he tried to bake them their favorite waffles like their mother did, even though they were not perfect. He packed lunchboxes for school, braided Katie's hair, which was not easy at first, but he learned from video tutorials. Then he drove them both to school and kindergarten, maneuvering through the morning traffic. He began to understand how much work Sarah carried on her shoulders every day. Before, many small everyday details had escaped his attention, whether the children had run out of toothpaste, whether they had clean clothes for gym class, when it was time to take his daughter for her vaccination. Now he did all of that. At first, all sorts of things happened. One morning they overslept, and the house was chaotic. Mike couldn't find his sneakers, Katie cried because her dad had braided his hair worse than her mom, the toast had burned in the toaster, and her school bag was left unpacked. Alex rushed from room to room trying to get everyone together, and ended up getting the kids out of the house late, with different socks on each of their feet. They even started laughing about the chaos along the way. Another time, he mixed up the days and brought Mike to soccer practice on a weekend, leaving his son wondering why no one was there. At first, such blunders threw Alex off track. But gradually, with the help of his neighbor Melanie, who willingly reminded him of important dates, and his own schedule on the refrigerator, he entered a new rhythm. After a month of vacation, Alex went to see his boss, Mr. Greenberg, for a talk. Alex, it's good to see you, he said softly, shaking his hand. How are you? I'm holding on, sir, Alex replied. Thank you for giving me the time. Don't thank me. Everyone here is very sympathetic to you, the chief nodded. Well, let's discuss how you see your return. Alex took a breath. Honestly, I won't be able to work as usual. The children require my attention now. I wanted to ask to be transferred to another position, with a flexible schedule, possibly partially remote. Mr. Greenberg rubbed his chin thoughtfully, then said, we have a vacancy for an internal consultant. The job doesn't involve traveling, it's project-based, you can do a lot from home. The salary is a little lower, I understand, but it doesn't scare me, Alex quickly interrupted. Money isn't the most important thing right now. I understand, the boss smiled. Then consider it a deal. We'll write an order for the transfer. And Alex, I'm glad you're staying with us. Alex felt relieved. Thank you very much. Thus, another important issue was resolved. He returned to work under new conditions, without constant business trips and irregular hours. Now he could pick up the children earlier, spend evenings with them. Every day in the schedule, he set aside time to help Mike with homework, read a story to Katie, and have dinner together. Previously, he often stayed late at work, and the children spent evenings with a nanny or grandma on weekends. Now he decided, no nannies, he can handle it himself. However, it wasn't without help. Melanie dropped by almost every day either to bring home made soup or to babysit the kids if Alex needed to go to the bank or see a lawyer. Alex's mother also flew in from Houston for a few days as soon as she learned of Sarah's death. She cooked for everyone, did the laundry, and tried to help her son with the housework as much as possible. She didn't pester him with questions, but one night, when Alex was completely falling apart, she simply sat next to him and held his hand, and he was infinitely grateful to her. Sarah's sister Julia also came for a week from Oklahoma, helped her sort out her sister's things, her wardrobe, and the children's toys. She and Alex cried through half of this sorting together. Despite his previous resentment towards Julia for deceiving him, Alex appreciated her concern. He gradually began to forgive her, seeing how sincerely she grieved and tried to help. So, step by step, a new life was built. It was simpler, slower. Alex no longer chased career heights. The loss of his wife showed him that the most important thing is at home, next to him. Every evening, putting the children to bed, he thought of only one thing, that they were healthy and happy, and he would somehow survive the rest. Several months passed. Alex's life gradually settled into a new groove. The pain of loss dulled, although in the evenings, while putting the children to bed, he still caught himself waiting. Now he would hear the familiar sound of a car pulling up to the garage, the door would slam and Sarah would return from work. But then reality would roll in like a wave. In those moments when things got really tough, Alex found refuge in talking to Claire. He and John Carter's wife had kept in touch since that phone call. At first, they called each other often almost every week, sharing how things were going. Then a little less often, but they still continued to text each other like old pen pals. Late that evening, after putting the kids to bed, Alex dialed a familiar number. He knew that at this time Claire's kids were also in bed, which meant they were both free to talk honestly without hiding their emotions. "Hello, Claire," he said wearily when she answered. "Hello, Alex," she said softly. "How are you today?" "I've been better," he answered honestly, running his hand over his face. "I've thought a lot about all these events. And you?" "I'm fine," she sighed barely audibly. "Yesterday I took John to another rehabilitation, so by the evening I was exhausted." Alex settled more comfortably on the sofa. "How is he? Any improvements?" "Physically a little, yes. He walks with a walker for now, but the doctors say he should recover. His memory is fine too." Claire was silent for a second. "You know, sometimes I almost wished that something in his head would be erased, so that he wouldn't remember this affair with your wife. It would be easier to start over, I guess." "I understand," Alex answered quietly. "But does he remember?" "Yes. He tried to talk about it, asked for forgiveness through tears." Her voice remained tense and even. "I even felt sorry for him at some point. Then I look and think, who am I feeling sorry for? The man who spat on our 12 years of marriage." There was a heavy silence on the line. Alex knew there was nothing to say her feelings were valid. Finally, he asked, "Have you decided for yourself what you will do next? Stay with him or—" Claire smiled bitterly. "I don't know. For now, we live under the same roof for the sake of the children and because he is temporarily disabled. But we sleep in different rooms. I can't forgive him, Alex. Probably never." Alex said carefully, "You have every right. No one would judge you if I leave," she finished. "Yes, I think about it. But here's the paradox. When trouble happens, I still worry about him. I care like a nurse. I can see it as a simple duty. But there's no love anymore, only emptiness and pain." "I'm sorry," Alex said sincerely. "It's probably even harder for you in some ways. He's nearby, and you see the reminder all the time." "Exactly," she sighed. "Sometimes I envy you. Forgive me if this sounds terrible. I understand, he said. Death, how can I put it, puts an end to it. But for you, it all drags on. They were silent for a moment. Then Alex asked, and the children, do they know anything about the real reason? No, of course not. They were told that Dad had an accident on the road. They were already scared. I agree, they don't need it, Alex sighed. I haven't said anything to mine either, and I won't. They have enough grief without it. Claire asked quietly, how are your kids? Are they coping? Little by little, Alex smiled sadly, looking at the photo of his son and daughter on the wall. Mike withdrew at first and was angry. Even at me, he probably thought that I was to blame for not saving Mom. But now he has become softer after we went to a psychologist together. Katie was very upset, cried at night, looked for Mom in the room. Now it happens less often, but it still happens. Poor little ones, she said sympathetically. They're in such a shock. I'll try my best, he answered quietly. I work less, spend more time with them. Sometimes, to be honest, I have no idea if I'm doing it right. There's no book on how to be both a dad and a mom at the same time. But you're doing pretty well, I think, Claire encouraged gently. Not every father can do that. We'll see, he replied. I'm just not chasing anything anymore. The house, the kids, that's all for now. I understand you, she said. I also asked to be transferred to remote work. While John was sick, I spent a lot of time with the kids, and I even liked it. It was as if they became closer to me. He said after a pause, I'm very glad that you and I communicate. Me too, Claire replied warmly. Without our conversations, I'd probably be depressed. After all, no one else can fully understand what we've been through. That's right, Alex confirmed. We're like therapy for each other. She laughed softly for the first time in this conversation. Right? Listen, Dr. Miller, is the next session next Tuesday. Alex smiled too. Agreed, Dr. Carter. They talked a little more about the kids and the weather, then said goodnight. As Alex hung up, he found himself feeling light for the first time that day. This unusual friendship, born out of pain and deception, was now part of his new life. No romance, just mutual support, and they were both happy with it. A few months later, Alex decided to take care of his own mental health. He had taken Mike to see a child psychologist to help him cope with the trauma, but he had always thought about himself last. However, insomnia, angry outbursts, and an endless feeling of emptiness were taking their toll. He was plagued by dreams. Sometimes he dreamed that Sarah was returning, safe and sound, as if nothing had happened in such dreams. She was smiling at him in the morning in the kitchen or putting the children to bed. And when he woke up, he re-experienced the loss. Sometimes, on the contrary, he dreamed that he was yelling at her, demanding an explanation, but woke up feeling guilty for this anger. All this was bursting to the surface and demanded understanding. On the advice of his family doctor, he made an appointment with a psychotherapist. In the small, cozy office with its soft chair, Alex felt awkward at first. He always thought that dealing with problems was a personal matter, and crying in front of a stranger was not in his nature. But Dr. Robinson, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, managed to win him over. You've experienced two tragedies at once, she said in a calm, sympathetic tone during one of the sessions. The death of your spouse and, at the same time, betrayal on her part. Each of these events is deeply stressful in itself, and for you, they've piled on top of each other. Exactly, Alex smiled bitterly then. I don't know what to focus on, the fact that I lost the person I loved, or the fact that she cheated on me. You don't have to choose, the doctor said softly. You have the right to grieve for both, to be angry and to grieve at the same time. Alex couldn't allow himself to say it out loud for a long time, but one day he admitted, there are days when I feel nothing but anger at her, as if I don't love her anymore. And then this. Despair comes over me because I love her and miss her, but she's not there. It's completely normal, the therapist nodded. Your love is real, that's why it hurts. and anger is a natural reaction to deception. Your task is to give space to both feelings without denying either one. Little by little, these meetings brought relief. Alex began to keep a diary on the advice of his therapist, where he wrote down all his thoughts about Sarah, both good memories and grievances. One day, Dr. Robinson suggested that he write a letter of anger, a letter addressed to Sarah in which he allowed himself to express all his rage at her actions. Alex made up his mind and sat down at the table late at night, rereading his diary entries about pain and resentment, and began to write a direct appeal to Sarah. The lines flowed one after another. "How could you do this to me? How dare you destroy everything we built? I hate you for abandoning me and the children for some moment in the past. You lied to my face while I believed your every word. You turned out to be a stranger." He wrote, not holding back his rage. His hand wrote trembling lines. "You betrayed our love, trampled my heart. Now you are gone, and I don't even have anyone to tell me all this to. How mean and painful it is to love you and at the same time be so angry that I have no strength." When the ink ran out and the sheets of paper were covered in tiny handwriting for a dozen pages, Alex felt a strange emptiness. At the next session, Dr. Robinson carefully analyzed each phrase from this letter of anger with him. Saying out loud everything he had spilled onto the paper, Alex seemed to be reliving his pain, but in the presence of an understanding person. This helped to relieve some of the burden from his soul. At the same time, life moved forward. The children grew up. The first Christmas without their mother was not easy. Alex tried his best to create a holiday. He decorated the tree with double zeal, baked, though not very successfully, Sarah's signature pie according to her old recipe, and invited both grandmothers to visit. It turned out warm, albeit with tears in her eyes. Katie asked then, before going to bed, "Did Mom see how we celebrated? Did she like it?" Alex, gritting his teeth, answered, "Of course, dear. She is always with us." After those words, he cried for a long time at night, but tried to make sure that the children saw only his smile. In the spring, Alex took Mike to his first baseball lesson, something Sarah had planned to do earlier. Standing at the field, he felt a lump in his throat as he watched his son catch the ball and turn around, looking for his mother in the stands. Alex would wave and yell, "I'm here," and Mike would get back into the game. These little things were hard, but they were learning to live together. In individual sessions, Dr. Robinson noted his progress. "You've started to look calmer," she said. "If at the beginning of our meetings you kept returning to that day of the accident, now you talk more often about children, about plans." "I think so," Alex agreed. "At least I don't replay every minute of Sarah's trip in my head anymore. I used to think endlessly, what if I had insisted on going with her? Or what if she hadn't gone at all? Now I can let go of those thoughts. We have no power over the past." "That's a good sign of acceptance," his therapist encouraged him. "It took you a while, but you're moving forward." At one of the next sessions, Dr. Robinson asked Alex to remember the happiest day he had with his wife. At first, it was painful for him to even think about it, but then, closing his eyes, he smiled through his tears and began to tell. "Probably the happiest day was when our son Mike was born. I remember Sarah going to work until the last day, and then suddenly waking up in the middle of the night, she started having contractions. I was so confused then, but she was calming me down, can you imagine? We were driving to the maternity hospital. She was sitting next to me, breathing deeply and stroking my hand. 'Everything is fine, honey. We'll make it.' She was telling me this, even though she was giving birth herself." Alex laughed quietly at the memory. "And then, when everything was over, when I first held our son in my arms, she looked so tired, but so happy. She told me, 'Look, Alex, this is the best thing we've ever done together.' I burst into tears right there on the delivery table with joy." The therapist smiled as she listened. Alex opened his eyes, wiping away the tears that still welled up at the memory. "I see that joy still lives in you," Dr. Robinson said softly. "Even after all the shocks, you still have bright feelings." Alex nodded. "Yes, and I'm beginning to understand. Despite everything, I'm grateful to Sarah for those happy years. It was real. Alex still wore his wedding ring, or rather, he wore it on a chain around his neck now, just as Sarah did with hers. At one session, he was fiddling nervously with the chain, and the doctor asked, "What does this ring mean to you now?" He thought for a moment and replied, "Probably memory. I don't feel like a married man anymore, but I'm not ready to take it off, put it away. Maybe later." The therapist smiled. "Do it when you're ready. Don't rush." Coming out of each session, Alex felt a little more air in his chest than before. He began to understand that life goes on, and it was in his power to fill it with new meaning, not by canceling the past, but by building on it. He also began to talk more openly with his children about his feelings. When Mike asked again, "Why did Mom leave us?" Alex did not brush it off, as usual, with the phrase, "It just happened." He sat down next to them and said, "Mom loved you very much, and she loved me. She didn't want to leave us. It was just an accident. No one could change that. It hurts me very, very much that she's not here. And you know what? If you're sad or hurt, you can tell me. Even if you're angry at Mom for not being here, that's okay." The son did not answer at once, but then he nodded and carefully pressed himself against his father. This was more than any words. So the days passed. Alex devoted himself to his family and his own recovery. On the advice of his therapist, he tried attending a support group for widowers and widows, but found no response there after all. His situation was more complicated than just the loss of a spouse. But personal therapy continued and bore fruit. Gradually, he really did feel a little better. One spring morning, as he was getting the kids ready for school, Alex found himself humming the old song Sarah used to sing while braiding Katie's hair. He paused for a moment, realizing it. His heart ached. The memory of her was all around him. But instead of pain, this time he felt a quiet, bright sadness and smiled to himself. Perhaps this was a sign that the wound was beginning to heal. Almost a year after the tragedy, Alex was gradually regaining his inner balance. Shortly before the anniversary of the accident, something happened that he did not expect. An email from John Carter arrived in his inbox. At first, Alex wanted to delete it without reading it, but he opened it anyway. John was writing an apology. The letter was long and rambling. John begged for forgiveness. "Alex, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I must apologize. I am guilty before you and your children. If I could turn back time, I would never interfere in your lives." He admitted that he had made a terrible mistake. "I destroyed your family, and I destroyed myself. Every day I curse the moment I decided to meet Sarah. Because of me, she died. I can barely look my wife and children in the eyes." John wrote that he was not asking for an answer. "I dare not ask you to answer me. Just know, not a day goes by that I do not regret what I did. I will have to live with this burden for the rest of my days." Alex reread these lines with cold calm. He no longer felt either rage or satisfaction, rather emptiness. He did not reply to the letter. He simply closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time, thinking about how strangely the fates of their families had intertwined. However, John's impulse to ask for forgiveness somehow finally removed the last fragment of anger from Alex's soul. Perhaps because deep down in his heart, he himself was tired of carrying it. A few weeks later, Alex remembered his promise to Sarah's parents to come to Oklahoma. He remembered that he had never fulfilled it, putting it off because of the worries of raising children. In the summer, when the children finished the school year, Alex felt that the time had come to fulfill that obligation. In the summer, when the children finished the school year, Alex took them on a short trip. They went by car to Oklahoma to visit their grandparents. The children were happy about the trip. For them, it was an adventure. At the threshold of Sarah's parents' house, they were met by the elderly Robertsias. Mrs. Roberts hugged Mike and Katie, crying from happiness and sadness at the same time. Mr. Roberts hugged Alex tightly, like a man, silently, but in this silence there was understanding and forgiveness. They spent several days together. The children played in the yard, and Grandma made Sarah's favorite cookies using an old recipe. In the evenings, everyone sat on the porch, talking about trifles and Sarah too recalling her school year's funny stories. Alex felt that he could now listen to these memories without sharp pain, rather with warm sadness. He even smiled, imagining young Sarah running barefoot across this very yard, as her mother told him. On the last day before leaving, the whole family went to the cemetery, where the urn with Sarah's ashes was buried. It was a sunny and quiet day. The cemetery was located on the outskirts of the town, among fields and sparse trees, and there was an almost rural silence, broken only by the twittering of birds. Sarah's parents chose a grave under a spreading old oak tree. The summer wind lazily stirred its branches, casting patches of shadow on the grass and marble. The tombstone was inscribed with the name Sarah Roberts Miller, and the same dates Alex had seen on the urn a year ago. The children held wildflowers shy of the unfamiliar place. Alex picked up his daughter and put his hand on his son's shoulder, encouraging him. Sarah's parents stood nearby, hugging each other. "Hello, Sarah," Alex said quietly, looking at the cold marble. "We came to visit you." The wind rustled the oak leaves. He helped Katie place the bouquet by the stone. Mike placed his flowers on his own and froze, hanging his head. Alex gently patted his son on the back. "We all miss you very much," he continued quietly. "The children are growing up wonderfully. You would be proud of them." Mrs. Roberts sniffled. Sarah's father took off his hat, wiping his eyes. Alex felt his emotions fail him too, but these were bright tears. "Thank you for being in my life," he whispered, and these words came from the heart. "For every moment, I forgive you, and forgive me if something was wrong." He fell silent, letting his tears flow. Katie, in his arms, buried her face in his neck, sobbing too. Although she was small, she understood the mood of the adults. Mike stood silently, wiping his eyes with his fist. After a while, they moved away. The old Robertsias kissed their daughter's monument and said goodbye. Alex's soul was surprisingly calm and quiet at that moment. It seemed that his soul finally became lighter at that moment. That evening, after putting the children to bed in the Roberts' guest room, Alex had a long conversation with Sarah's parents at the kitchen table. They were drinking tea and talking frankly, as they had not done for a long time. Sarah's father suddenly asked, "Alex, have you thought? Well, maybe someday you could start all over again. Family, I mean." Alex was a little taken aback. "Honestly, no, sir. I haven't thought about it yet. I have enough to worry about with the kids." Mrs. Roberts smiled softly. "We understand. You are a wonderful father, but you are still young. You have everything ahead of you." "Maybe," he said thoughtfully, "it's not in my head yet." He didn't tell them about Claire, and there was no need. Their friendship with her had never gone beyond phone conversations. He had no romantic feelings for her, nor did she for him, as far as he could tell. They had simply been each other's support in difficult times, and now, having overcome the worst, each of them was moving on with their own lives. A day later, Alex and the kids said goodbye to their grandparents and headed back to Dallas. At home, they had new worries. Mike was starting a new school in the fall, and Katie was starting preschool before first grade. Alex was planning a small renovation of the house. He finally decided to repaint the bedroom where he and Sarah had once slept to make a room for his daughter there. These practical tasks did not replace memory, but they symbolized that they had moved on, that they were on the road. 5 years passed. Life had settled into a calm routine for the Miller family. Mike had already moved on to middle school, and Katie was preparing to start 5th grade in the fall. Alex was still working as a counselor, managing to pick up the kids and spend evenings with them. Laughter was once again heard in their home. In June, Sarah would have turned 40. On this day, Alex and the children observed what had become a tradition. They baked their mother's signature cookies, using her old recipe to remember her. The kitchen was a creative mess. Flour was scattered on the table. The dough was sticking to your hands, but the baking sheets were gradually filled with fancy cookies. "Dad, do you remember how Mom taught us to cut out hearts from dough?" Katie asked, pressing out a figure with a mold. Of course I remember, Alex smiled, laying out the cookies on the sheet. You're doing great, just like her. Katie smiled happily. When the cookies were done, the three Millers sat down at the table. They video connected their grandparents from Oklahoma to have tea. They had also baked Sarah's favorite pie at home. In recent years, the Robertsias and Millers celebrated Sarah's birthday together, albeit from a distance. Remember when Sarah was in the 5th grade and decided to wash Mom's car and forgot to close the window? Mr. Roberts laughed, beginning one of his favorite family stories. She poured soapy water all over the car. We were all angry, and she stood there, covered in foam, repeating, "I just wanted to help." Now Mrs. Roberts smiled through her tears, too. Our girl was always a fidget. That's who got Katie to pull a prank. The children listened with shining eyes. They adored their grandparents' stories about their mother. Alex held a cup of tea and caught himself feeling a quiet joy. Instead of pain, memories of his wife now brought warm sadness and a smile. After saying goodbye to their grandparents, Mike and Katie ran out into the yard to play. Alex noticed that there was a new message on his phone. Claire Carter had sent a short greeting. "Thinking of you today. I'm sure Sarah is so proud of you. Hugs, Claire." Alex smiled warmly and responded with a few words of gratitude. He and Claire continued to correspond, though less frequently, sincerely rejoicing at the successes of each other's children and supporting important dates. Today was no exception. Alex stayed behind to collect the cups. On the kitchen wall hung a collage of photographs he had taken them last year. In the center was a large portrait photograph of Sarah, and around it were dozens of small pictures of their happy family over the past 15 years. Sitting down for a minute to rest, Alex remembered himself on the night he received the call from the hospital. Then it seemed to him that his life was over. But now the years had passed, difficult ones, full of pain, work on himself, and now he could smile and enjoy a new day. He realized that he had managed to survive both betrayal and loss, had managed not to become embittered, but to become stronger and wiser. For a moment, his gaze met Sarah's eyes in the central portrait. "Happy birthday," he said quietly. "We're doing well." The yard was drowning in the rays of the midday sun. The ringing laughter of children was heard. Alex smiled confidently and went into the yard, where the children were waiting for him, the main legacy of his and Sarah's love. Life went on, and they still had many bright days ahead. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.